creation, and 1:18 in Colossians is talking about the same identical thing we're attempting to establish right here. They're very complementary, almost the same language, almost, I would say, huh? And because in Ephesians 2:1 it says, "And you were dead in your trespasses and sins." And so we're able to follow that. And then it goes on to say, I think we're clear on that, and faithful witness, and the firstborn of the dead, and the ruler of the kings of the earth. What do you think that means? Who are the kings of the earth? And what are the options there? Rather than to say, who are they? I would rather approach it by, when we talk about the kings of the earth, what are the options? Who could be the kings of the earth?
It could be the kings, it could be the governments, it could be
And not so fast. Go ahead.
It could be literal kings, it could be the governments, it could be the principalities and the demonic world. Read it, I don't, possibilities.
Could be the saints.
That's possible.
Could be the saints. It says that we're a kingdom of priests. Some people say we're kings and priests. I guess we're going to have be kings and priests. Could be that. Okay, so I think that the options that Luke pointed out were so far we've got on the table the Christians, if we were to identify them as kings. Then we've got the satanic powers, and then we've got the government leaders, which would be synonymous with what he said, literal kings, government leaders. Which of those would you find that you'd prefer that it wasn't?
We could eliminate just one.
Well, let's start with eliminating one. Then maybe first of all, hold on. We have three options. Okay. Now, is there any of the three options we'd like to be able to eliminate? And if so, why?
Well, the demonic.
We'd like to. We'd like to eliminate the demonic. And why would we like to do that, Daniel?
Well, it's may cause a lot of adversity.
Pardon me?
So they, causes a lot of adversity.
Okay. Are you aware of the context? Are you aware contextually of what we're saying? See, when I ask a question, I always ask my question, or I'd like to ask my question, in regard to the context. So we have a question, and we have the context. You can't, one second, you can't answer the question correctly if it would be satisfactory to me unless you're equating it to the context. Okay? So that's my question. Which would we like to eliminate of the three options so far we've mentioned based upon context?
I was surprised the way you expressed it. Are you using the NASB there? Or which version did you were quoting from?
New American Standard.
Let me just compare that verse in these various translations.
Actually, Jim, we wouldn't want to eliminate none of them, really. The supremacy of Christ over all things, Jim.
Well, that's a good point, Bob.
And we can trust Jesus Christ, Jim, if he's supreme over all things, Jim.
Okay, it says in the KJV, it says, and the prince of the kings of the earth. That's the way I thought you said it, but in NASB, it says, and the ruler of the kings of the earth. NIV says, the ruler of the kings of the earth. And there's a paraphrase that says, and the commander of all the rulers of the world. That would be God. So,
I would think if you read it in the context, it's talking about the saints. That's kind of what I'm getting.
The problem with that view is I'm not sure we have a direct verse that says saints are kings. Okay, we do say that we're of a kingdom of priests, but I'm not sure we have a verse that actually says that we, as a lot of these people that have said over the years, we're kings and priests. Where's the verse that says we're kings? We're in a kingdom.
Verse 6 is coming out, next verse.
Yeah.
Read the verse.
And hath made us kings and priests unto God.
What translation are you in?
That's the KJV right there, but, I'll read it.
The Bible says like everything's talking about it's all of God.
Verse 6, he hath made us his kingdom. Oh, that's perfect. 6. And hath made us to be a kingdom. Yeah, King James says exactly that. It says,
Yeah.
hath made us kings and priests.
So if we
unto
stick
God.
with the King James, then Frank's point is a good point, okay, which I like. If King James is correct, I like that translation. That's not what the New American says. It says kingdom, and so it doesn't kingdom of priests. So the question is, which is the correct translation? And I apologize, I didn't check King James out on this, and I should have, and then I could have attempted to give a comparison of which might be the most accurate rendering
But
of
if
this
we-
verse.
If we go to just the previous verse that was originally in question there, and just look at your NASB, it says, and the ruler of the kings of the earth. The ruler of the kings of the earth. I don't see what's so vague about that.
It doesn't say it in the New American Standard, that.
I've got it right here,
I do too.
What?
New American Standard. It says,
The ruler
it says,
of
and from Jesus Christ, the faithful witness, the firstborn of the dead, and the ruler of the kings of the earth.
Okay. My point is, where do we have a verse that says we the Christians are kings?
Well, that was the next verse, but the original question we had was on verse 5, to answer to clarify what it means, when it says, and the ruler of the kings of the earth. And that doesn't seem to me like it needs much of a clarification.
Well, obviously, we know that was my original question. Obviously, we know it's talking about kings. And so I said, what are the option of who these kings are talking about? And we came up with government leaders, demonic forces, and literal government and kings.
Yeah,
Okay,
I understand.
but my point being, then Frank said, I think it's the kings. And I said, where do we find to where it says that the Christians, born again believers, are kings? Where do we find a verse that says that? That was my point.
Well, it's the very next verse.
Well, what's the next verse say?
The KJV. It's the very next verse.
Oh yeah, if you take the KJV then.
Yeah.
Okay, if you take the KJV, then the next verse says, it doesn't say kingdom of priests, it says kings and priests. So therefore, Frank's point would be applicable if the King James Version was correct. And we could live with that option at this point, since we have a difference in translation, and I haven't checked it out. We don't know which is the best rendering of that verse 6. But what I'd like to do is, when I asked you which of these you would prefer not to have an option, Daniel said the demonic factor. Frank seemed to emphasize that he'd rather have it be the Christians, so therefore the other two were not preferable. The reason I raised the question is because when it says ruler of the kings of the earth, what does a ruler do?
He rules.
He rules. And so that would mean that if we said that it's talking about the literal kings of the earth and the governments, similar to a concept we find like in Romans 13, we would have to question the rulership of the ruler, it would seem to me.
Well, I think that...
Let me finish here for a second. In other words, when we take the concept of communism, we take the atrocities that were committed in Africa and Cambodia by these rulers. We consider what's going on even today within these rulers. That's nothing to mention Genghis Khan and Adolf Hitler and numerous others. Are we going to want to consider that Jesus is their ruler, allowing them to do and rule the way they are with humanity? I prefer not to go that way. As a matter of fact, I would just be a slam dunk with me if it wasn't for Romans 13. But as a result of Romans 13, it causes a little bit of a problem, but because I have interpreted Romans 13 as being godly governments,